Boys, the plan is simple. You want to play NR format, but you don't know what staples to put into your deck? Fret not, gamers. I am here to give you the complete engine and staple list right out of the gate. I'm going to try to give very short explanations for why we play these cards, and just buckle in, there are a lot of cards. First up, we have the Kaijus. We have Radiant, Godarla, Thunder King, and Jizukuru. They all serve their own purpose in whether they need specific attributes in order for your own plays to go off, or you maybe just want to summon a big dude that you can repeatedly bounce to hand to beat your opponent with, a la Yosenju. They all have their own ups and downs, but usually if I had to pick just one, if you're playing Yosenju, play Thunder King because you can bounce it, and if you're playing anything else, play Godarla because it's the smallest one. Additionally, you could play Kyoto Waterfront in order to search out Kaijus, which is really funny. It doesn't even remove counters. That shit's nuts. If you're looking for some rank 4 or link bodies, I can highly recommend the Dangers. The most prominent ones, and the only legal ones, are Chupacabra, who's a reborn, Mothman, who cycles in the hand, Dogman, who's dog shit, Thunderbird, who's a Dark World Lightning, and Ogopogo, who is terrible, but he's level 8, so we make do what you do. You can make a Malevolent Sin with the level 4s, you can make Dragoobian into harder with the level 8s if you really want to, and Dogman just kind of sits there kind of sad. These are pretty good in a wide variety of decks where you kind of just want additional bodies, and you kind of just want to add like a teensy bit more consistency into more generic plays such as Cosmo. Would really recommend looking into these if you plan on playing Danger Dark World, which is slightly playable this format. Here we have a ton of generic staples that you can basically slot into any deck ever. Sangan is a pretty good searcher, but again, it's Sangan in 2022, so again, this card is just pretty slow. Just be aware that if you're playing this card, don't expect to come out of the gate immediately swinging. Fire and Ice Hand are pretty good at blowing up boards, as they were in like 2012, but just be aware that your deck's going to be a little bit more bricky because you're basically playing a 6-card engine where you only ever want to open one card of that engine, so just keep that in mind. Mashada is a great free special and has a great effect where it can return a card on the field that your opponent controls to the hand. Absolutely busted. Just always one of the best cards in limited formats and just one of the best cards in general. Unfortunately, it's only at 1 because it's broken. We've got Ancient Warriors, Loyal Guan Yun. If only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. It's like Cyber Dragon, but it activates. And if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target one monster your opponent controls and destroy it. This effect is pretty good. It is really nice to just sort of have this free special body that applies some sort of pressure onto your opponent by popping the monsters, being a big booty. I'd say like the only bad thing about it is that its effect isn't a quick effect and it can't target back row. So again, I know it's literally just worse Pankratops, but you give and take what you can get. And Parallel Exceed is just sort of good if you plan on playing Link Climb stuff, such as in the aforementioned Danger Dark World. Parallel Exceed is sort of like a good enough card. There are enough rank 4s and enough like Link 3s and Link 4s that you can go into that make Parallel Exceed worth playing, such as Malevolent Sin and Triple Burst Dragon, I suppose. If you're planning on playing a more stall deck or something like Yosenju, where you want your field to be mainly empty, the Battle Hand Traps are actually pretty good at stalling your opponent out. We've got Battle Fader, who of course is just the best one on the list because it just straight up ends the battle phase and gives you a free body. We've got Sphere Kribo, who's terrible but funny. We've got Construction's Train Signal Red. When your opponent monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, change the attack target to this card and then go to damage calc, and this card cannot be destroyed by that battle. It's funny, I suppose. It could stall out 2 attacks, and if you use it on like the last attack, you can maybe use it as link material or like for a rank 3 sort of scenario. Battling Boxer Veil is just kind of the same thing as Construction Train Signal Red, except it's a level 4. And same with Speedroid Menko being the same as Battling Boxer Veil, except instead of ending the battle phase or getting life points, you change all face-up monsters your opponent controls to defense position, which is pretty good against anything that's not blue. And it has arrows, I suppose. Yeah, all the Battle Hand Traps are like, they're okay. They're kind of cute, but again, just note that they can get pretty bricky, and if you're not drawing the play starters, you will lose and cry. Here are a lot more of the generic spell cards that you could play, both for removal, extension, all that good sort of stuff. We've got Fissure and Smash and Ground just as single target removal. They don't actually target, but they serve as non-targeting forms of removal for most cards, which is pretty neat. They basically serve two sides of the same coin. Speaking of non-targeting removal, we've got Lightning Vortex. Discard a card, destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. It might seem weird that we're not playing literally Raigeki in this format, but one of the main issues with Lightning Vortex is it requires you to discard a card, which is pretty important in a resource-based format, but two, it's not great for going first. Obviously, if you draw into a Lightning Vortex going first, if your opponent manages to crack your board, you are basically guaranteed some sort of follow-up. But again, you might be discarding a turn 3 play starter in order to use the Lightning Vortex on turn 3. And again, Lightning Vortex just kind of acts as a dead card on your first turn. So again, just keep that in mind. Maybe play it in like Blind Second Yosaiju. Back to square one is a form of removal that kind of yada locks your opponent. It's non-destruction sort of removal, and it can honestly just win you a game just by the sheer tempo of your opponent kind of being fucked. Note that it only targets monsters, so keep that in mind. Also, it does require discard. Psychic Eraser Laser is a non-targeting, non-destruction send for monsters summoned from the extra deck. This is pretty good for outing problematic stuff, such as Dragoobian, Heart of Dragon, Malevolent Sin. Stuff that you might have issues getting over. Really, really nice card overall. Wing Requital is pretty good if you're playing Blackwing Raid Raptor and only that deck, because nothing else is playable. Next, we're playing Moon Mirror Shield. It is funny, I guess. Put your opponent on a clock. Yeah, this card's just annoying as shit, but it's really funny. It's not too hard to get rid of because, again, there exists a lot of forms, a lot more forms of destruction in spells and monster effects rather than like in the TCG where you can't really negate on Moon Mirror Shield. But again, Moon Mirror Shield just kind of a pretty funny card overall. Dimensional Fissure is a floodgate, and if you play this, I'm allowed to beat you to death with a hammer in Minecraft once they implement that in the next patch. Anyways, Summoning Curse, floodgate. It's pretty funny against certain decks, but against a lot of other decks, it's kind of just gonna be dead. But yeah, it's funny, I suppose. Make your opponent loot themselves. MST is without a doubt one of the primary haymakers of this format. It's generic, it's good, it hits back row, it hits... yeah, that's about it. Book of Moon, another great haymaker. Turns off your opponent's playmaking pressure if they're trying to go for link plays. Turns off offensive pressure if they're trying to go for battle phase shenanigans. Just an amazing card. It still sees play today in like the TCG. That shit's nuts. And Forbidden Chalice, I would argue that this is without a doubt the best staple in the format. There's so many cards that Forbidden Chalice has practical application against that it's honestly just so broken. Mithrilium Spins, Megalith Fool and Bathor, Hang on Mock without the FA City Grand Prix. This card is just absolutely amazing at doing so much, and I absolutely love it to death. If I could play one staple on Metaphos, if I had the space, it would be Chalice, without a doubt. And Silent Graveyard is really bad, but really funny in certain matchups. You could use it against, like, Metal Foes and FA, I guess. It's not good, but it's really funny, and I just decided to, like, put it on the list. There are a ton of traps that are viable within the NR format space, and I want to be sure I can cover as many as possible, so let's just get started. We've got Waboku, who prevents battle damage and monster destruction by battle, which is pretty good sometimes, considering that a lot of the removal exists within the battle phase specifically. There are some decks that could get around this, but again, it's a really overall good card. Ring of Destruction, single target removal, deals burn damage. Sick! Torrential Tribute. This card is broken in the TCG. How would it not be broken here? Bottomless Trap Hole, good as just a 1-for-1 trade for spot removal for big guys, but against Pendulum it could be especially deadly. Needle Ceiling, just sort of a slightly more utility-based Torrential Tribute, where you can activate it basically whenever you want, as long as the requirements are met. Compulse is Compulse. It returns the card to the hand, like shit. Phoenix Wing Wing Blast, this is basically back to square one, but a trap card, it can target anything. Honestly, way better. Trap 6 Trap Hole Nightmare. It's like Solemn Strike, but bad. Anyways, Time Space Trap Hole. This is pretty okay for dealing with stuff like Pendulum Summons, because it just basically shuffles everything back to the deck and then you instantly lose. But note that, again, it's only really good against like specifically Metal Foes and maybe like a Berserker of the Tenyu. Wall Disruption is pretty funny. If your opponent's got like a huge link board that they're trying to push into your face, you can just activate the wall and basically you can technically survive. What's funny is that the attack loss is like permanent, so if they don't like find a good link spam, tool to do after they get disruption, they're basically screwed. Anyways, the Paleos are especially good in this format. Olenoids being an MST, Canadia being a Book of Moon, and Deinamiscus being targeting banish removal. They also, again, double as bodies that float from the graveyard whenever you activate a trap card, which is especially good for going into rank 2s and link spam plays. Floodgate Trap Hole is good for pissing off your opponent. If they summon the EMZ and you flip this, you basically win the match. Lost Wind is Lost Wind, targeted negation that is basically Chalice 2, but a trap that can reset itself upon the special summon of an opponent's monster from the extra deck is especially good when you consider that games can get pretty drawn out and grindy. Network Trap Hole is a trap hole, I guess. Anyways, we've got Ballista Squad. This is terrible, but it's funny, so I'm gonna put it on the list. You can't tell me it's bad. Guard Dragon Cataclysm is great if you're playing a dragon-based deck. Stuff like Dragon Maid and even like Heretic are playable in some capacity. Thanks to this card, you can tribute a dragon monster, target 2 cards on the field, destroy them. It is literally Icarus attack, which is pretty good. Jelly Cannon. What the fuck? Anyways, we've got Dogmatica Punishment. There are a lot of targets that are technically big enough that you can send. The main problem is that most of the targets that you're going to be sending don't really have beneficial effects when they're sent to the graveyard, so you're not going to be getting additional pops like with Entis. You're not going to be getting Surge like with Titaniclad. Mainly, you're just going to be sending like a Blue Eyes White Dragon, the ultimate dragon, in order to get the pop. It's pretty funny. Dragon Maid Tidying is, again, a pretty good, just generically good dragon staple if you're playing something like Heretic or Dragon Maid. If you're not playing this in Dragon Maid, I don't know what you're doing. EMR is pretty funny for machine decks. You can basically get multiple pops if you tribute something big enough, something like a Machina Fortress, if that's even legal. I don't actually know what's even legal for machine decks. Anyways, you got Divine Wrath, which is only slightly worse Solemn Strike. It requires a discard of a card, but if you're playing a deck that generates a ton of resources, something like Metal Foes, you could technically justify putting it in. We have Mind Over Matter. Speaking of Metal Foes, yeah, this card is terrible, but it's really funny. It's like Solemn Judgment, but you need to tribute a Psychic type monster, and guess what type all the Metal Foes are? That's right, I used to play this, it was terrible. Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi is at 1, so it's a lot less impactful, but if you're playing something like, of course, Tenyi or Metal Foes, or something like Ballpark Pacifist, you can technically slot this in as a pretty good, just generic counter trap. It's pretty nice. Mirror Wall is 10 times worse Wall of Disruption, but it's permanent, I guess. It's bad. It's not good. It also has a 2,000 life point cost. Who wants to pay that? Fiendish Chain and Fogblade are basically just the same thing. Targeted negation, prevent your opponent from attacking. Very, very nice overall. And the Monarch's Erupt is here if you want to play either Monarch or True Draco, and you're a sociopath who gets off on, you know, flipping a floodgate. Let's take a look at some of the extra deck options, starting with the Synchro portion. We've got Stardust Charge Warrior. It's a level 6 Synchro where you can just draw a card. Really, really nice overall card. And you could just punch things really hard. Really, really good card overall. I actually really, really like it. I love it. Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon is really difficult to make, but you can cheat it out with the Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon when it's sent to the graveyard. And it's got a pretty relevant effect. Monsters in your opponent's possession, which includes the hand for you battle trap monsters, cannot activate their effects during the battle phase. This is honestly just a good card. It's actually like insane. It's pretty neat. Next, we have Ciphering Lord Zeta, who, once per turn quick effect, you can target a special summon monster your opponent controls in face-up attack position, banish both that monster and this card from the field, but return them during the standby phase. This is just a generic Synchro 7 that you could use just as spot removal. Really, really good card overall. Judgment Dragon, the Dragon of Heaven, is basically just a board wipe to... board wipe. I don't know what to say. It's a board wipe. You pay half your life points, mill some cards. Sick. And finally, we have Nirvana High Paladin, which I'm not going to read. I don't know what it does. It adds a card from your graveyard to your hand. It, like, scales. I don't know what it says, but I've heard it's good. The Xyz portion of the extra deck really is the heart and soul of most NR decks, so there are a lot of Xyz monsters that we're going to have to chew through. Number 45, Crumble Logos is great as just a generic negate tool for rank 2 spam sort of decks. The Phantom Knights of Cursed Javelin is good for beating over monsters. It's pretty good at that. Mannequin Cat is honestly its own win con. Just being able to special summon monsters with the hand, deck, or graveyard just continually onto the board, as well as having a pretty nice body in 2,000 attack points is pretty neat. Shadow Lich is terrible, but it's really funny because it summons a token. We've got Super Quantum Mech Beast Grand Pulse, one of the best rank 3s in the entire game, as a matter of fact. Is just pretty great for overall spot removal of the back row. Huge 2800 defensive booty, just very, very nice overall. DDD Stone King Darius is great for removal during the battle phase, which is quite unique. Number 75 Bamboozle and Gossip Shadow is a terrible card, but if you want to play a monster negate that's a rank 3, you could technically fit this in. It's not good, but again, NR format, Omega lol. We've got Evil Swarm Nightmare. A double Book of Moon is always going to be amazing, no matter what the format is. Just note it requires 2 level 4 dark monsters, so it doesn't fit in every single deck. Evil Swarm Thanatos. I don't know. He's a shitty towers, I guess. Number 50, Black Ship of Corn. Spot removal in the extra deck, deals burn damage. Pretty nice overall. Just note that it's not going to work on every single monster because it has to have attack less than or equal to Corn's own attack. So you can't really target like a 2700 Malison. Tri-Headed Dust Dragon is terrible, but if you really want to play a rank 4 that gets really big, you can play this, I suppose. That's not named Malison. Number 58, Burner Visor is pretty interesting. If you want to equip it to like a monster so it can attack directly, it can technically accomplish that, but it's not good. It's just kind of, it's kind of cute. If you want to deal like some direct damage with like a Malison, it's funny. Gakkaga Samurai is pretty good for OTK plays. The Dual Link staple himself, it can basically just deal 3800 damage or remove like 2 relatively weak monsters. Super Console Mech Beast Ouroboros is Book of Moon, but without any of the redeeming qualities of Book of Moon. Because it doesn't have Super Quant materials as Xyz material, because you're not playing Super Quant in this format because it's terrible, because you don't have like Red Layer, you don't get the quick effect of its effect, which is again Book of Moon. So if you want to play this, you can. It's just not amazing. Malevolent Sin is without a doubt the best rank 4 in the entire format. The Dual Link staple himself, you can target a monster your opponent controls, banish it until the next standby phase, which is just good spot removal for getting in for big damage, and if it attacked, you can increase its attack by 300 and increase its rank by 3, which is pretty important for certain rank up plays that we're going to get into. Force Focus is the only good rank 6. It's bad imperm, I guess. It's really bad. 9 Lives Cat is a pretty funny rank 9. I don't even know what this card does. All I know is that you used to play it in Generator. Anyways, for the Spider package, we're playing 1 Ravenous Tarantula, 1 Pain Gainer, and 1 Seven Sins, just so that Seven Sins can get really big and you can link Xyz ladder into it. On to the second half of our Xyz portion, we have Herald of Pure Light, who is funny, I guess. You can re-add stuff from the graveyard and shuffle a card from your hand into your deck. Pretty good if you want to get certain cards back into your hand after using them. Yeah, that's literally what the card's function for. Fortune Tune is funny as a stall card because there's no Zeus. Jaja is funny as a stall card because there's no Zeus. Photon Paplio Operative is pretty okay. You can get rid of stuff that's set onto your opponent's side of the field if they're trying to like wall up. You can flip up your own flip effect monsters if you're playing flip control for some godforsaken reason. Night Paplio Operative is pretty good for just getting a huge monster. This monster can get very big. I think it can get up to like 3200. I don't know how math works though. Heartland Draco is a pretty relatively okay monster. It was featured in the Advent calendar, I guess. You can attack directly, which is funny. Rhapsody and Berserk is pretty good at pumping up your own monsters and stealing stuff out of your opponent's graveyard. Not a bad utility monster, if I do say so myself. Speaking of utility mons, we've got Diamond Crab King. If you want a wall or a huge beater, this card is great at both. But again, you're playing fucking Diamond Crab King. This card sucks. Anyways, Heavy Armored Train Iron Wolf is pretty good in Machine Beatdown if you want to just play a 2200 monster that can attack directly. And of course, it does float, which is amazing. So keep that in mind. But just note there aren't a ton of Great Earth machines within the format. We've got Volcasaurus, the rank 5 staple himself. Burns, destroys. It's good. I don't know what to say. Target removal. Freezedon is pretty bad in this format because unless you're playing a specific kind of deck that's able to make like a ton of rank 4s, rank 5s, rank 8s sort of deal, Freezedon just doesn't really find a great home. But if we do manage to find one and you want to be using multiple Xyz effects more than once per turn, definitely Freezedon is going to have a home in that. Dig Vorjack is weirdly great. If you're playing this in like Earth Machine, you can basically just break your opponent's board at any state in the game. It is absolutely incredible. It just like pops 2 to 3. It's incredible. Shark Fortress attacks directly. That's cool. Dark Arm Dragon, the Dragon of Annihilation, is amazing. I remember this card being kind of like the Copium meme card, and then I realized you could just crack boards the same way Dick Vorjack can. If you're able to make rank 7, such as in Metal Foes, you are more than likely gonna be seeing this card a lot, and you're gonna be going into this card a lot. It is just amazing. Harmonizer Gradiel is okay. She's like a bad Towers that requires setup, but Towers is a Towers, and she has 2700 attack. Aegeon the Sea Castrum is, again, terrible, but it loops stuff out of your opponent's extra deck and is a big booty. If you're playing like Danger Dark World and you kind of just want like a funny win con, Sea Castrum's pretty nice at that. We've got the Dragoobian Package. This is without a doubt arguably the best rank 8 line in the game for NR format. Dragoobian going into either Heart Earth Dragon or Heart Earth Chaos Dragon, I suppose, is really, really good. Heart Earth Chaos Dragon being able to just basically nuke your opponent's board for blank your opponent's board for card effects, and Heart Earth Dragon just nuking your opponent's board by banishing everything. It's absolutely insane. And I know that Heart Earth Dragon can't be destroyed by a battle. Wow, they both can't be destroyed by battle. That shit's nuts. Anyways, yeah, pretty good XYZ monsters overall. And finally, we're on to the Link portion of the generic staples. We've got Imduck, which can be made using like a Paleo and is just pretty good at beating the shit out of your opponent's cards. Yeah, it's a fucking shit all construct. Crazy. Monk of the Tenyi is obviously for the Vashetta. Gravity Controller is just a pretty good generic removal option that a lot of decks have access to. If you're playing any sort of deck that requires summoning from the extra deck, something like maybe like Terrible Shadal maybe, Gravity Controller is pretty usable in its own right. You can basically just bounce a bunch of stuff. You can sit on this as a pseudo battle protected card from the extra deck. Just overall really good, especially great in stuff like Metal Foes, where you're able to trigger Odd Eyes, Absolute Dragons, Mithriliums, all that sort of jazz. Code Talker is a generic Link 2. It's probably the best Link 2 if I'm being honest. That's completely generic. It's got a downward pointing arrow. That's all you need to know. Double Bite Dragon is terrible. Everybody was talking about how this card was going to be the second coming of Christ in this format. It is so bad. It gains attack equal to the combined Link ratings of the monsters used for its Link summon times 300. Spoiler alert, it's not going to be a lot. And unaffected by monster effect except Link effects, and cannot be destroyed by battle except by battle of a Link monster. Now, in theory, you can get this guy really big, and basically no other Link monster can really contest it. However, there's a card called Gravity Controller, and like 50 other cards. There is kind of just the overall issue of this card loses hard to any sort of spell trap removal, and the issue is that any sort of board where you want to go into Double Bite Dragon just gets beat by like 15 other plays. It's terrible, but if you want a generic Link 2, it's there, I guess. Pentastag, the Dino staple, is pretty good for piercing, I guess. Cross Sheep is great in exactly Metal Foes and Megalith. This card has really nice downward pointing arrows too, so if you want to just play a generic Link 2 with Land for Linkus arrows, this card definitely does do it. If you're playing a fairy deck, you could technically play Mirage Light. It's not good, but you could technically play it. You can send like Condemned Witch. Codebreaker Virus Swordsman is pretty good, just being a downward pointing Link 2 that has 2300 attack, and if you really want to, you could summon the 0 Day if you manage to set up for it good enough, which is not bad. Geonator Transverser, mind the zones. Do not summon in Zone 3 or Zone 1. You will get transversed and you will be made a fool on my live stream. Absolutely incredible card for people who don't know how to play around it. Triple Burst Dragon is pretty good. There are a lot of decks where this card just kind of comes up against. It can negate Metal Foes counter, it can negate floating effects, it can negate Dragon Maid Tinkek if your opponent doesn't read Triple Burst, I guess. There are just a lot of general practical applications where Triple Burst will come into play, and I really like it. I negated the Striker Ace Ray once. That was funny. Power Code Talker is big guy, negates, I guess. The main problem with Power Code Talker is that it requires 3 monsters, not 2+, so you can't make it like a Link 2 and like just another generic monster. But overall, this is still a pretty good overall Link 3 boss monster to go into for OTKs. Berserker of the Tenyi, in my opinion, is the best Link 3 because he's just fucking huge. He's a 3000 attack monster with really generic Link materials. The Link monster is usually never going to be that much of an issue because you're usually going to be using like Geonator, maybe a like Cross Sheep or like a Virus Swordsman or Code Talker. It's never going to be that hard to make. Steel Star Regulator is like Double Bite Dragon, except somehow worse. 3 non-Link monsters, something attack points, something it pops a card. It's terrible. Don't play it. But it's funny, I guess. Agave Dragon is absolutely based. You deal burn damage. Like, I don't know what to say. It deals burn damage. Link 4, huge body. Honestly, not even the worst option on this list. Like, it's a genuine card. Now let's get into engines, starting with Dyer's absolute favorite, the generators. The generators all basically revolve around this field spell, where if your opponent adds a card from the main deck to the hand, which includes the draw phase, by the way, you can special summon a generator boss from your deck alongside up to 4 tokens. And the Planet Pathfinder is just here so you can search out the boss stage, which is pretty neat. All the bosses have unique effects based on triggering tokens or monsters of their own type to apply some sort of effect. Utgarda is a really bad ABC Dragon Buster, which is honestly pretty broken in this format. Nidhogg is a really bad Solemn Warning. It's not great. Doppelgist, generator boss of iron, allows you to special summon machines from your hand or other generators, which is terrible, but you play it in Gadget Raider, I suppose. And Frody allows you to tribute an amount of tokens / warriors and destroy that many monsters on the field, but your opponent can draw equal to the number of monsters destroyed on their field. So if you can board wipe them for 4, you're just giving them 4 draws, so just keep that in mind. If you want to play a rank 4 or 8 resource engine, we have the Earth Machine package. This is just a package designed to help you really easily get out rank 4s, rank 8s, and generate a ton of resources in the process. Note that it does take a ton of main deck space though, so keep that in mind. We have 3 heavy forward in order to search out the 3 Infinite Track Anchor Drill, which alongside gold and silver gadget allow you to special summon an Earth Machine from your hand. It's broken. You've got yellow, red, and green gadget as your primary targets, since they do replace themselves on summon and just help you get this infinite ball of resources going. Note that the Infinite Track Anchor Drill can target another machine monster control, and the levels of both that monster and this card become the combined original levels of those 2 monsters until the end of the turn. So let's say you're targeting a red gadget, 4 + 4 = 8, both monsters become level 8, boom, Dragoobian, boom, effect, Heart of Dragon. Pretty annoying, pretty good. If you have the ability to make rank 7s, Odd Eyes Absolute is an amazing card to go into. When this card leaves the field, which includes by link summoning, destruction, by battle, absolutely anything, you can go into either Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, who's able to negate stuff from your opponent's battle phase, as well as just summon stuff from your pen zone, which is honestly pretty good, or Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, a fucking Omni Negate. Yeah, this shit is legal. You'll notice that this is the only set of cards I don't own, Astraltopia and Numbers Protection, and that's because you can't craft them, you can only get them from the fucking Utopia structure deck. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But if you really want to go all in and maybe set up a number and you have the Astraltopia, you can technically do so. It's just so goofy. You can search basically an Omni Negate counter trap, but again, you have to spend 1800 gems in order to do so. Absolutely goofy, but it's funny, I guess. Next up, we have the Assault Mode engine. This is honestly one of the best normal summon engines inside the entire NR format in itself. You've got PSI Reflector, who is able to add the Assault Mode Activate, or a card that lists Assault Mode Activate onto its hand. Usually you're going to be adding Assault Beast, you're going to discard the Assault Beast to add the Assault Mode Activate, you're going to reveal the Assault Mode Activate with the PSI Reflector in order to add back Assault Beast, you're going to increase its level by 4 in order to go into the Hyper Psychic Blaster, who's just kind of a 1-card Blue Eyes White Dragon, I guess. And the Assault Sentinel is basically just here in order to grab the PSI Reflector. You play this one as a Garnet, you can play Magical Mallet if you cope hard enough, and Hyper Psychic Blaster just is a dude. He gains life points. He pierces. What more could you ever want? And finally on the list, we have the Condemned Fairy package. It revolves around Condemned Witch, which, if it is normal summon, you can add a Forbidden Quick Play spell from your deck to your hand, which is always going to be Forbidden Chalice. Don't let me catch you adding anything else. And during your opponent's main phase, you contribute this card as a quick effect, special summon 1 level 4 monster from your deck that is a fairy except itself. Now, there are 3 good targets. We have Condemned Maiden, who's arguably the worst one. It just has a big booty, and you can activate 1 quick play spell from your hand during your opponent's turn, which is a once per duel effect. I guess if you have an additional Chalice or you don't want to set it because you know your opponent may have an MST, I guess I could see you justifyingly playing this. It's not amazing, but the 2 other targets are just as good, if not 10 times better. Aurora Paragon is Vanity's Fiend, but way worse. Not only can special summon monsters, when another monster is normal summoned to either play the side of the field, destroy this card. If you could bait out your opponent's normal summon that's got low attack points, you could just float into the Paragon, and you could basically just, I don't know, laugh at your opponent, I guess. And finally, Arya, the Melodious Diva. This is arguably the best one. While the special summon card is on the field, Melodious monsters you control cannot be targeted by card effects or be destroyed by battle. If you get this onto the board and your opponent doesn't have a convincing out, you might just win the game. It is actually hilarious how good the Melodious lock is in limited formats. But yeah, they're not good. They're terrible. They're garnets, but they're really funny to play. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you feel like I missed anything on the list, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below and what sort of staples you plan on running. I've been Stevie Blunder, and thank you guys so much for watching. See ya.